Good day, sir.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Jeffery Haskell, welcome to the show. Great pleasure having you on.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So where are you coming to us from?
Right now, I am in sunny Palm Springs, California, which is about 150 miles east of Los Angeles.
That sounds so cool where you are right now. Right.
It's the desert.
You made this so cool.
But I normally live in West Jordan, Utah.
Okay.
I'm visiting my brother down here in California for the week.
Nice, nice. So it's straight out desert, no beach, no
No,
poolside.
no, it's desert hills surround this place. It's called the Coachella Valley. It's just nothing but sand and palm trees that aren't indigenous to here.
So I'm curious, what does one do for fun when they
Well,
that
I'm
cold?
here. I don't know because it's California, and if you've ever been to California, there are a lot of restrictions on everything you can do. When I'm in Utah, I can do whatever I want. I can go shooting, I can go hiking, I can, have a lot of fun outdoors or indoors. There's not a lot of government telling you what you can and can't do there. Here, my brother loves ATVs, and he can't ride them anywhere except for designated places that are very few and far between. And you're not allowed to really own guns here. So my biggest hobby is shooting, and I can't do that here. So I'm just waiting to go back to Utah so I can.
So do you do shooting as a hobby or is it something professional?
I was in the military, and before that, I've basically been shooting my whole life, and so it's usually just a hobby. I don't. I'm a little old to be doing it professionally, though. There are certainly some experts who go around the country and they do competitions and stuff like that. I just really like the skill of and the hand-eye coordination and the reward of hitting the target exactly where you wanted to hit it.
Yeah.
So that's for me is just all about precision.
So military turned award-winning author.
Yeah, I know, right? Crazy.
Too often. It's the first time for the show.
I
And
was
then-
I was in the Army when I was right out of high school. I joined the Army, and I wasn't in for a really long time. I had planned to make it a career, but it just didn't work out that way. And then I got into writing. I had been into writing pretty much my whole life, but I didn't really get serious about it till I was in my 40s, and then it really turned into something special.
So, wasn't going to bring this up now, but since we're already on the conversation,
Oh,
so
sorry.
I mean, you're a science fiction author, right? So, I mean, we can put that under fiction, but given your experience from the military, have you ever written non-fiction stories?
I did actually do a couple of nonfiction books having nothing to do with the military, though. I wouldn't consider myself. I don't consider myself an expert on military stuff to write a nonfiction book. I did write a nonfiction book. They're not in print anymore, but one was on being a husband, and the other one was about getting into writing and how to really launch your writing career in a way that will make you successful eventually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, under your bio or what I received is that you're a coach slash mentor for other authors out there, which is quite cool. I mean, you can share a bit about that, later on. So yeah, it's interesting. Interesting. As I said, first time for the show, military author. Wow. Wow. So Jeffrey, you are a USA Today award-winning author, you're award-winning journalist. I got some questions about that, but later
Sure.
on. Your coach slash mentor. So before we get into your writing and your book, you have been passionate about writing from a young age.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
what's the thing that look like?
most writers you talk to, they have a very similar story. I've always wanted to tell stories. I've been doing it since I was a kid. So it's nothing, it's funny is most writers kind of sound the same, when it comes down to it is, they have a passion for telling stories, and writing ends up being really the only way they can make that work. It just so happens it took me a long time to find a way to make it work in my life.
Yeah. So when did it like come to you? That hey, I love
Well,
this.
I had always written, but whenever I'd show my work to anybody, they would tell me how much it sucked. And
Part of the process.
but it is part of the process.
Yeah.
The problem with me was particularly was is I was dyslexic, and I didn't know I was dyslexic, which means that I have trouble seeing words as they're actually written. My brain tends to rewire them. So, for instance, fear is spelled FEAR. I would spell it FERE, because in my brain would make that connection and fill in the gaps for me. And so I had a really hard time spelling and forming a sentence that made sense to anybody but me. And I didn't know that. And I kind of just thought it was stupid. I didn't know that until I was in my 40s. Once I figured out that I was dyslexic, there's a bunch of coping mechanisms you can use to help you deal with it. Like one is like write in a font that is very unique, like Comic Sans, and the other is to have a background to your work that is a different color than white or black, because both of those tend to drown out the letters and let your brain make those leaps. So I write on a pink background in MS Word with Comic Sans, which is, if you ask anybody who knows anything about fonts, they'll tell you that it's the worst font ever. But it worked for me and lets me actually see the words instead of like my brain making up the words. So what I mean by that is my brain won't look at the word fear or there and say, oh, I know what that is. It's spelled this way. It's forced to look at each individual letter. And because it looks at each individual letter, it allows me to see the word as a whole, as opposed to the dyslexia kind of mixing everything up. And so once I started doing that, my stories actually got pretty good that other people could read them and be like, oh, hey, you do know how to spell. You do know how to form a sentence.
Wow. I mean, for you to figure that out in your 40s,
Yeah.
that's wow. Like, I mean, prior to that, so nobody ever told you, look, I mean, this is what's wrong. Or
Well,
just for the listener, him necessarily saying that, having this is wrong, we're all unique and special in our own way. And you can turn this into something great with your life.
you can, except dyslexia isn't something that you can really easily diagnose. It's not like you can take a blood test or, it doesn't look any different than somebody who just doesn't know how to spell and doesn't, like take the time to learn how to spell. Like I knew how to spell, but when I'd actually type out the words, my brain would tell me, this word is spelled this way. And no, you did it right. And so it was pretty difficult. I don't know about public school where you're at, but where I was growing up with public school, they were overwhelmed. There's too many kids in the classes, and you can't really, their solution to anybody who was different was to put them in like a special education class and go slower, which doesn't actually really help anybody. It just kicks the can down the road. So if you want to teach yourself something or learn something to do yourself, you have to do it yourself. And it just so happens I just thought I was dumb, and I had enough teachers and educators tell me that over the years that I believed it, and so I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I just thought I was stupid. And then once I
Yeah.
learned that I had dyslexia by looking at because someone said, hey, that sounds a lot like dyslexia, in the internet age, because I was able to look on the internet and be like, why do I have such a hard time spelling? And then I started researching it, and a bunch of people were like, well, try a pink background, try Comic Sans. And once I did that, it was like 85% better. And then the rest was me getting a good editor who could help me take what I already knew about story and kind of codify it. And, from there, it just, it exploded. And my first ever book that I submitted to a publisher, they picked it up and published it. And, that was kind of amazing. It was a big deal for everybody involved, myself included. And then I did self-publishing for a while. And when I established myself in the self-publishing arena as someone who produced books, and the sales were pretty good, I attracted the interest of another publisher, and they said, "Hey, what would I was writing superheroes at the time. Like, we don't do superheroes, but is there something you'd be interested in writing that we publish?" And I was like, "Well, I've always wanted to do military sci-fi. It's what I grew up reading. It's what I love. I just didn't think I was good enough, at the time when I first started self-publishing to do it." And I pitched them a story, which ended up being against all odds, and they loved it. They only wanted me to change virtually everything about it. And I did actually change a lot because the guys at Athon Books, who was my publisher, Steve Bollier and Red C. Bruno, really know what they're doing. Like, they're probably two of the smartest guys I know when it comes to publishing and marketing and things like that. And so and then Against All Odds came out, and it was a huge hit.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. Firstly, public school is no different. And I feel, yeah, wherever
I honestly, I
school,
homeschool my children because I don't think there is a way. I don't think there is a right answer for the government to run schools. I
yeah,
don't think there is.
but it's built by design, right? It's just how it is. It's built by design. So I would also recommend, homeschooling for kids of this day and age, this generation. You
Especially with
absolutely
the internet, and you have access to
exactly.
everything ever known about everything. There's no reason
Yeah,
not to.
yeah. The only thing that's missing, when you self-educate yourself, is a certificate. But then you become smarter than the people that actually got a certificate. you know?
Yeah,
So
my kids are pretty smarter than I was at their age.
yeah, so it's more like, okay, if you're going to go into the like self-educate yourself, it's like you need to become an entrepreneur in that specific niche, whatever you are passionate about. Combine it together and make something of it, because the reality of the matter is, if you're still going to have that mentality of, okay, let me go out and look for a job because I've self-educated myself on this specific topic, the companies are still like, oh, okay, what's your experience? Are you qualified? And it's pathetic. If you ask me, it's pathetic. But I highly suggest, homeschooling with regards to that. So when you were talking about, self-publishing, how far back was this?
I got serious about writing. Let's see here. How old was I? This is when I was 41, and it was 2015. And we were about to have our third child, and I had lost my tech support job that I had. And I told my wife, I was like, give me 1 year to make a go of this writing thing. You give me 1 year, and if I can make it work, then obviously it works. But if I can't make it work, I will go work wherever I have to work for the rest of my life to provide for you. And so that was 2015. In the end of 2016 is when my first book that I sold to a publisher got published. And then in 2017, I started self-publishing because I didn't like the way that they handled the marketing of that book. They marketed it a little bit. It sold great, and then they never marketed it again. And I was like, well, wait a second here. It sold great. Why aren't you keep marketing it? And they're like, well, that's not what we want to do right now. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do my own thing now. And in June of 2017, I published Arsenal, the Full Metal Superhero, and it sold really well for a self-published book. And as long as I was publishing books on a regular basis, they all continued to sell really, really well. The only downside to that was that I was killing myself working really hard, publishing every 3 months like clockwork. And it's not really a schedule I was able to maintain. Certainly couldn't have maintained it now because of how many words I had to write every day and how many books I had to get out. I had to do a book every 3 months. It's 4 books a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes more. I had a year where I did 6 books, and it's exhausting. And it doesn't, it's still fun and it's still great. I still love doing it. It's just, I have children and I have a wife. It was just exhausting, and I couldn't maintain that schedule. So when I realized that is when I started looking for, someone else to take over all the demanding work of marketing and distributing it and getting it into bookstores and stuff like that.
Yeah. Becomes tough, eh? I mean, when you were talking about the publisher, only marketing once, it's no different to the music industry if you sign to a label with a 360 um, with 360 deal, because once you release the album, they will only market it once, they'll promote it once or build a hype around it, and then for the next year to two, you have to go on tour to promote the album. So not sure whether it's like the same sort, of mandate,
Yeah, it's
compared
very
to
similar.
publisher. So did you
Um,
ever so do you think maybe they said it because they wanted you to go out and promote it with book tours, or did you ever do that?
yeah, I keep telling my publisher I'm happy to do a book tour, but when it comes to the vast majority of my sales come through ebooks, and it's only recently that Athon was able to land a deal with Simon Schuster and Barnes and Noble so that Against the Odds can be released in the bookstore. That hasn't happened yet. The deal's in place, and you can pre-order the books at Barnes and Nobles. I believe in the United States and Canada. I'm not sure anywhere else. But they haven't actually come out yet. When they do, I keep pushing for them to send me on a book tour. I would love to do it. I think it would help with sales. But you're right. That first, especially with ebooks, the first month after a book comes out is when you're going to get your most of your sales. That's your opportunity to make a mark. And if you don't make a mark in that first month, the chances of you doing it a year later or 2 years later are really, really slim. Now, does that happen? Do we all pick up books or music that came out years before and suddenly as a culture they all become huge? Yeah, sure. And it does happen. But you can't really rely on luck like that when you want to make a living off of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, for you. But I mean, going on a book tour should be like an obvious one, right? You know,
It
there
seems
should be
like to
something
me.
that the author should
I'll
be
tell
already
Ethan.
published.
I'll tell Ethan that Kino said send him on a book tour.
Yeah, please do. You can play this part, of the interview for him. Because I mean, you need to build a community around your work, whether it's building a community around your brand as an author or building your community around your book. And you need to build an intimate relationship. So how else would you do it, you know, except by interacting,
But you're
with
not wrong.
people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny is there's a lot of, so this is the book Against All Odds. There's a lot of science behind you picking up a book and reading it every day, right? So you want to read this book. I don't know how fast you read this. It would take me about 10 hours to read a book this big. Certainly took me a lot longer to write it. But when you pick it up, every time you pick it up, you see my name and you see the book title, right? And so that becomes imprinted in your brain. Now, when you're reading an ebook, you only ever see the cover once, and that's when you buy it. And you never see the name of the author or the title of the book again. You read it beginning to end. It might take you 10 hours, it might take you 5 hours, but you never really see any of that again. So it's much more difficult to build a lasting memory in a reader who's reading just ebooks versus the paperback books. Now, having said that, I knew that going in. I knew that when I first started writing in 2015, seriously anyways, that my wife and I sat down because she's the smartest person I know, and she's made made a lot of really great decisions, for both of us about like, okay, this is how your strategy should be, and this is what you should do. And she also is a really brilliant artist, and she's the one who did the covers. And it's Rebecca Haskell, vividcovers.com.
Welcome.
And
It's a great color.
yeah, it is.
So
And
well done, Rebecca.
I agree. And one of the things that we figured out is that I had to write in a way that made people remember the story more than just, oh, that was a good story. When's the next one? And then forget about me, because there's so many books coming out every day, especially on Amazon. We had to find a way to like what really inspires people, what really gets them going when they're reading a book, what really makes them feel emotions. And one of the things the books do better than any other medium is they make you feel emotions over a long period of time. Movies are great. Don't get me wrong. We all have our moments in movies, like Lord of the Rings. We all have our moments where, when Sam says, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you. We all feel that.
You feel it.
And you will every single time you watch the movie. but it's just a few minutes. You only feel it for a few minutes. Whereas a book, you can get to feel those emotions over the entire course of the time it takes you to read the book. And that's really what it takes, to get someone to remember who you are, is you really got to not just take them on a journey like, oh, that was a cool story, but you really got to make them feel it, in their heart and in their bones. And, I like to think I did it based on my sales. I did it, but, it's always a continual journey to keep doing it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing so much dope science behind it all.
Well,
The
there's
science
a lot of
behind reading.
storytelling.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
just us telling stories that we think are cool. It's, my wife and I have this theory about the reason why we do fiction. Fiction serves no useful purpose. It evolutionarily speaking, it doesn't really serve a purpose. Why do we tell each other stories? Unless there is a purpose, and that purpose is, let me tell you a story, and in that story, I will warn you about a behavior or an action that you need to avoid because it will get you in trouble or it will get you killed. And and when you can kind of match a really great story with a lesson, then you'll achieve something really good.
That's a deeper message. I had the same conversation with an author last week about that deeper message in one's writing. What am I going to take away from this? And I said, when an author tells me that, just like you have as well, that's when I know you are truly passionate about what you are doing. You don't just want to push out a story. Yeah, it's cool to take people on this journey for 10 hours, but I also want the reader to take away something from this, that deeper message. As you said, lesson, you know?
And I do. And what that lesson is and what that message is, I leave up to the reader. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know what I wrote, but I leave enough space. Like it's a collaborative medium. When you're reading a book, and if the author is just cramming it down your throat, that their message, it's no fun.
Yeah.
But when you come away from the book and you think, wow, this is how these people behaved, and this is what they did, and this is my takeaway from it. That's what I want. I want to leave room for your experiences and your interpretation and your beliefs to come into play. I don't ever want someone to think like, "Oh, were you saying this or were you saying that?" I'm like, no, I wasn't. I wasn't saying anything. I was presenting a situation, and these are how the people behaved. Whatever you took away from it is the right answer. I know what I take away from it, but whatever you took away from it, that's the right answer. And a lot of it is, I was in the military. I'm still coming to grips with the PTSD I suffered from being in the military. And, part of me is hoping that anybody who was in the military who reads these books can come away from it feeling a little bit better about their service and about their time and about the stuff that they've had to do in that time. And it's not all pretty. It's unfortunately, being a warrior is hard work, and you see and do things that nobody else does or sees, and things honestly humans shouldn't have to see and do. And so I'm hoping that, military wise, if you read the book, that you come away with it feeling a little bit better about your time in service. And if you're a
Nice.
civilian and you read it, I hope you come back with a better appreciation for the suffering and the pain that people in the military have to endure, and a little bit better knowledge of how the military works and how warfare in general works and politics and stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's link what you have just said to your books. It's not just Against All Odds. There's several other books as well in part. You added before sci-fi earlier on military sci-fi. Would you consider this now being like a new genre or component of sci-fi itself, based on what you just said?
Well, I tend to think that all fiction should be this way. Whether it's military sci-fi or straight up space opera or science fiction or fantasy. Now, in military sci-fi, yeah, obviously you have to have the military as a component of that science fiction. It's not military sci-fi if the story is not about men and women in the future dealing with the military and the technology that has evolved in that time and how they, cope with existence of that. If it's just people in the future dealing with technology, then it's just sci-fi. And there's nothing wrong with just sci-fi. I love sci-fi, like Star Wars, love it. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. I love science fiction of all kinds. But because I was in the military and because of the time I was raised, I was born in 73. I grew up watching all the old World War II movies and reading all the books by the authors who'd actually fought in World War II. I grew up loving military science fiction. And that's what I ended up wanting to write. So, yeah, I mean, it absolutely is science fiction. And if you've never been in the military and you don't know anything about the military, you will enjoy these books because I don't write just for people in the military. I write for everybody. So in that respect, yeah, it is science fiction. It just happens to also be about people in the military.
Yeah. Oh, okay. By
But
the
as we
way,
get,
I don't see myself ever joining the military. I'm putting it out there.
well, I mean, it's. I was at a con last year in Georgia. There's a United States, Georgia. There is a really big conference there called Dragon Con, and it's one of the biggest fan cons in the United States, which probably means it's one of the biggest fan cons in the world. Though I won't say that unequivocally because I don't know. But like 130,000 people descend on Atlanta, Georgia, and it's quite the wild event. And I was at our bookseller, Ithon Books. I was at our booth, and I was selling everybody's books because the easiest way to talk about my book is to sell everybody else's books. And this girl comes up and she's like, "Well, I really like lit RPG." And I don't know if you're familiar with what lit RPG is, Kino, but it's basically, you're a character in a fantasy world, and like game stats, like from a video game, are real, and people know what they are, and you play that world like you're playing a game. And I asked her, I was like, "Well, do you like fantasy or science fiction?" She's like, "Oh, I like fantasy. I don't really like military science fiction. I don't like the military." I'm like, "Okay, that's legit. I'm not going to get offended about that." I was like, "Did you like Lord of the Rings?" And she's like, "Oh, loves Lord of the Rings." Because who doesn't love Lord of the Rings? I mean, there's got to be something wrong with you if you don't like Lord of the Rings. And I hope you like Lord of the Rings. and I was like, "Well, I'm going to take a guess that the thing that you like about Lord of the Rings is the relationships between the people. You're not I don't want to like pigeonhole anybody, but men tend to like things and stuff, and women tend to like people and relationships. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean men can't like relationships and women can't like things and stuff, but in general, that's usually how it rolls." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love that." And I'm like, "Well, that's all military sci-fi is you have a group of people from all over the world or the universe coming together for a common goal when they really would have nothing in common outside of that military setting. And they form these bonds and camaraderie that will last them the rest of their lives." And that's all military sci-fi is. Then you just put it in a spaceship or on a planet that's not Earth, and you let it go. And it's these people who are trying to win against odds that are astronomical, and they're underfunded and undergeared, and nobody trusts anybody, but they all have to work together for a common goal. And that's what makes military sci-fi great is because that's what makes the military great is you get these people from all over, at least in the American military, you get these people from all over the United States. Some people from the South, some people from the North, some people from the West. I grew up in Alaska. I was serving in the Army with people from Boston. And I don't know if you know anything about Boston, but they all sound like this. Pasta pa, down by the bar, And I was from a town of like 3,000 people. And this guy I worked with was from a town of 3 million people. It's completely, but we all worked together. We all wore the same uniform. We all became the best of friends, and we prevailed. And that's what military sci-fi is all about.
Yeah. Before I continue with your book,
Oh,
I
sure.
just want to say it's so crazy how you could be from the same country, go state to state, province to province, depending where you are in the world. And there's this cultural shift, but yet you're from the same country, Then you really have to start going back into history to understand why, why it's this way. But it's just fascinating.
It is.
Like
It
what I love
absolutely
about
is.
the world.
A lot of the South was populated by people from France who were aristocrats running from persecution because they were, in France in the 1800s, they were chopping everybody's heads off like it was a national pastime. And so they, a lot of Arkansas and Alabama and Louisiana are all people from France who came over trying to avoid that, but they came over and they didn't get to keep any of their money. So they all became incredibly poor, farmers and ranchers and whatnot. So it's really interesting, like how you get these different cultures, because the United States really isn't one country; it's like 18 different countries geographically, But we all serve the same. We all have the same belief system overall, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's really interesting. And then you can play with that in fiction. You can play with people with different beliefs and different different races, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, but because they're all coming together to do the same thing, it works out.
So
My family in the 1700s went from super rich, wealthy aristocrats to dirt poor pig farmers in Arkansas. So it's kind of funny.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, against all odds, okay, I know there's other books involved in this as well. So how you summed up, sorry, military sci-fi, sums up your book. This is the direction that you're going in,
Yes, absolutely.
except it's taking part in space.
Yeah, in space, 1,000 years in the future. But people don't change. I don't know. I don't know how old you are, but one of the lessons I have learned in my life is that an individual, you, me, anyone, is absolutely capable of great change. I am not the person I was at 20 years old. You know what I mean? Like, not even remotely. If someone traveled from the past to now and held me accountable for the things I said and did when I was 20, I'd be like, listen, I don't even know who that guy is. All right. I'm 52 years old. It's not even remotely the same thing. But people, like as a whole, humanity doesn't change. We are exactly the same people we were 3,000 years ago. And those are the people we're going to be in 1,000 years. The names change, the nomenclature changes, but who we are, what we do as a people never changes. It's all about money and power. And so it's easy to write, whether you're writing modern day techno thrillers, historical fiction, or 1,000 years in the future, like I like to write. I don't have to come up with any kind of new kind of human, because there's no new kind of human that exists, because there is no, we're the same people we were, we have been for the last 6,000 years.
I agree with that. There's a podcast I listened to. It's called Philosophize This. And one episode was about the future is cancer. And not in the same words that you have just explained it, but the host goes on to explain it the exact same way. He says that there is no future with new ideas. All we are doing presently is duplicating ideas that was formulated years ago, before my time. About your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, all we do is taking ideas that was generated back then, reverse engineering it now for the present time. Space travel,
Here's a perfect example. So you went to public school?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember how in public school, if one person did something wrong, everybody got punished?
Yeah.
And the idea is that if everybody got punished whenever someone did something wrong, then those individuals would be like, well, if everybody gets punished, then I'm not going to do something wrong in the future, right? The idea is that you wouldn't do something wrong in the future because you got punished in the past. That's from Plato. Plato came up with that idea. Plato came up with the idea of punishing an innocent man if it meant that other people in the future wouldn't commit the same crimes. So, and I say he came up with the idea. He wrote it down and we read it today. But, I'm sure he didn't come up with that in a vacuum. So, and that is an idea that is woefully wrong, because really all it does is piss you off, right? Like, I got punished for what somebody else did. Well, now I don't care. But people still follow it. It's 4,000 years old. People still follow it. They still do it. Our entire public school and civic government is based off of the idea that it's okay to punish the wrong person if it means somebody else in the future won't commit that crime. And, so like you said, people don't change. We just regurgitate ideas that, come and go. And sometimes we get good ideas like freedom, and sometimes we get bad ideas like, communism.
Does freedom really exist? Question mark.
That's a great question. What makes us not animals? And the
Yeah.
thing that makes us not animals is the thing that allows us to say, this is what's best for me, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what's best for somebody else. That's my
Yeah.
personal opinion on that. Because
Yeah.
animals don't have free will, right? Animals just do what's best for them at any given moment based on their instincts. And most
Exactly.
people are like that. Most people will do what's best for
Yeah.
them at any given moment. Very few people will willingly sacrifice themselves for somebody else, even if it means they die. And maybe that's why I joined the military, or maybe that's why anybody joins the military, or maybe that's just what makes people become police officers or firemen. Like, who rushes into a burning building? Everybody else is trying to get out and you're trying to get in. That makes no sense. But people do it every single day to save lives. They're not there to save the building. They're there to save lives. So
And that's
it's those are the kinds of stories that I tell. Do the
yeah.
thing that is probably most certainly going to result in your death, but will save somebody else's life.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Specifically over the last 2 weeks, I've been, asking myself over and over and over, why do I do certain things that is selfless for the benefit of someone else? But as the quote goes, no good deed goes unpunished. But no matter how much punishment I can take for doing good things, you know, you still go on doing good things. It's like natural for me to like show up and okay, what can I do today that's gonna be beneficial to humanity? But yet there's so much selfish people out there all around me on a day-to-day basis that doesn't care about the next person, continues doing what they do that only benefits themselves. And I'm like, okay, why don't I just do that? Maybe life will be better, you know?
And maybe it would for a short while, but I honestly believe that those people are miserable. I have a friend, and he has made a lot of money in his life, and he said that he never made money for himself. He just looked at every opportunity to see how much money he could make for the people around him, and by doing so, ended up being wildly rich. And not such good a friend that I could borrow money from him, but good enough friend that I talked to him a couple of times. And I love that. It's how, what am I doing that can enrich the lives of others? And yeah, if by doing so it also makes me more successful or more happy, then let's do it. I just
Yeah.
have never been able to be the person who is like you. I've never been able to be the person who is like, okay, what's the most selfish thing I can do that just looks out for me and nobody else, and do that. I've never been able to do that. If you figure that out, let me know.
Sure. I guess, sometimes you find yourself in situations over and over again. Deep down that it's not going to change the person I am or what I'm building, right? But you just find yourself in the situations, going through these bad experiences with people over and over and over and over. That makes one question themselves, like, what am I doing here? Is it really worth it? Should I continue? Should I just like step
How
back?
many
And
jobs do I have to lose because I refuse to be that bad person while everybody else around me is? Yeah,
how
no,
many opportunities will I let go past me?
yeah.
Because I'm putting other people first.
And it's just, I know exactly what you mean. I feel that exact same way in my life. And all I can tell you is a lot more. Because I just can't be that guy who is like, oh, I'm gonna hose everybody else at the expense. I feel it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's some like moral giant. You feel it in your head. You're like, man, if I promote this guy's book over mine, what happens if he becomes successful? Which to reply is, then he becomes successful, and I had a part in that, and that's great. And it's just you at the end of the day, I always tell people at the end of the day, it's you, a mirror, and God. And you got to look yourself in the mirror and you got to answer to God. And
100%.
you do you, and
Yeah.
I'll continue to do the stuff that I believe is right. And I can't fault anybody who believes that they're doing the thing that they think is right.
But I mean, that right there is what I tell like colleagues of mine. I say that even though, you know, I won't get the appreciation from whoever I'm helping, right? But God sees it. God knows it.
And
You
you
know?
know it, you know. So
Yeah, you know,
you know,
and that's what I love about like, coming onto the podcast each and every single day. And it's three different podcasts, right? But, talking to amazing people all around the world, like makes me realize, yeah, this is worth it. You know, it's worth it. Like keeps me level again. Because the examples that like I'm talking about on the show is not even related to the creative work that I do or the podcast that I do, just general people that you see in society when you walk outside your front door.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So I'm
there
like,
is a theory that the butterfly effect, right? Have you heard that
yeah,
before?
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you help your neighbor helps somebody else, and next thing you know, you've changed the world.
yeah.
And
You can't
you
help
know,
everyone.
you can't help everybody. You can't save everybody. That's kind of a theme too in my books about the idea of like even if you do the right thing, even if you do everything right, you still can't save everybody, and not everything always turns out the way you want it to. A lot of times in fiction and movies, you'll have the hero and they'll do all the right things, and at the end of the movie, they're appreciated for it, and the world sees that oh, they were really a great person. I wish the world was that way, but it's not. However, you can't do the right thing with the expectation of being recognized for doing the right thing as your genesis for doing the right thing, because then you're not doing the right thing, you're doing it for selfish reasons. And in the beginning of Against All Odds, the main character, he does everything right and it still goes bad, and he's still blamed for a situation that he didn't create. And does it stop him from continuing to be the man he is and continue to do what's right? No. It sucks. It really sucks.
Mm, mm,
But,
mm.
you know, and as you've probably experienced in your life as someone who tries to do the right thing and has probably been punished for it in the past, it can't change who you are. You have to keep doing the right, thing as you see it.
Man, I still get punished for it.
And you
See,
will
it's like,
probably until you die.
exactly, exactly. This life is not for everyone, right? Jeffrey, like just talking to you, right? I haven't read your book yet, but I can already foresee the messages that people can take away from the book because now I've come to learn you and know you and understand you. And it's great what you're doing, you know?
Well,
And anyone listening to the show, if they don't know what I'm talking about, you need to get yourself checked. you know, and you're not
I'm
reading
a
in
great
between the
believer
lines here.
in writing in a way that I shouldn't have to explain to you. I shouldn't have to explain to you what you take away from a book. Like we were talking about earlier. If you read the book and you take away that the main character sucks and that I'm horrible, then that's what you take away. If you take away from the
Yeah.
book that the main character is sort of this noble guy living in a world that's not so noble, and you really enjoy the book and you think that I'm okay, great. I am not all my characters though, and all my characters are not me. There are bad guys in the novel. There are bad people in the novel. There are good people in the novel. Some of them are people who have faith. Some of them are people who don't. It's not a Christian novel, but there are, because it involves humanity. There are Christians in it. And there are other faiths in it. One of the characters is from Japan, and she is Shinto. So it's like it's you get a lot of diversity in that respect.
Yeah.
I try to write, like I said, I try to write about people who feel and seem real. I try to keep anybody from being too cardboard cut out when it comes to who their characters are. Though, to the surprise of myself, I have a lot of people who are like, oh, this villain seemed very, two dimensional, and I was just like, some people are like that, right? I mean, some people just like to be bullies, and there's not a lot more to them. There's no deeper story. They weren't bullied as a child. They weren't treated badly at some stage. They're just bad people. And sometimes they have reasons for it, sometimes they don't. Just like some people have reasons for being good, sometimes people just are born that way. And so it's there's a lot to take away from the book, and there's a lot of great characters, I think, anyways. But I'm a little biased. And I always tell people, if you like the cover, if you look at the cover, you can see, like, there's a lot of space combat and stuff like that. But if you look real close, you can see the shark on the cover of the ship, on the nose of the ship.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I grew up watching like Battlestar Galactica and Robotech and Space Battleship Yamato and Star Trek. And so to me, like the ships, like the Millennium Falcon, the ships are really important to the story. They're characters in of themselves. So if you like the cover and you like what I'm saying about life and stuff, then you're gonna like the book.
yeah. No, man, I like you. So how can I not like the book?
One would hope.
And that's the madness, good madness, behind my show. Like, yeah, I could go for 45 minutes to an hour just focusing on the writing, focusing on the book, but it's not what the show is built for. The show is built to really get to know the author, because for me, once you like the author, you already know, as I said early on, what I'm going to take away from the writing itself.
Well, good for you. I like to talk about just about anything. So 45 minutes for me is nothing. I have a question for you that,
Yeah.
I'm dying to know. Do you play League of Legends?
Do I what?
Do you play a video game called League of Legends?
No.
Okay. But you do listen to Linkin Park.
Yeah, some songs. I'm not really into, like, I grew up, listening to Linkin Park and, Chester Bennington and so on. And there was tracks that, stood out for me and really, I mean, it's the same with me, as you were explaining about books and that emotions was the same with music, You go through this period in life that takes you back to the song Numb. You're like, yeah, I'm feeling that right now. What can I take ridiculous from that? I mean, when Chester passed away, it was devastating for anyone, as long as you were involved in the music industry,
I had to spend like 2 years not listening to Linkin Park because I just made me sad because that guy meant so much to my whole generation. Linkin Park is an anthem to the early 2000s, late 90s, and it was a big deal when he passed away. Unfortunately, I asked because I was curious if you had heard their new song, "Heavy as the Crown."
I am going to be totally honest with you since we're on the topic, and I actually had an entrepreneur, musician, and producer on the show last week, Thursday, and we jumped onto the topic. I love how diverse.
Well, you got a poster behind you, so
yeah, I got a poster. Yeah, got a poster. It's like when you compare the music of an artist or a band, in the 2000s versus today, I am not really feeling it. So yeah, I got the picture, and here's just the year. So this is the Linkin Park I grew up listening to, But the Linkin Park of today, I'm not really feeling it.
that's totally a fair answer.
Like, even on Thursday, we talked about Eminem, right? I grew up listening to Eminem from Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, The Eminem Show, Encore. I mean, those were albums that stood out for me, And then when we look at the Eminem of today, no disrespect in any way, right?
Totally, I know. Yeah,
I'm not feeling it,
Yeah.
No, I'm not feeling it. And this was a guy, I mean, I had his posters all over my room, in high school. Like, Eminem was like, for me. He was like my, go-to guy, through whatever I was going through at a young age. And then I compared it now to the Eminem of today, the Linkin Park of today, the Jay-Z of today. I'm not feeling it, Even the Beyonce of today, if I want to go down the female artist route here, I compare Beyonce's tracks, which was coming up and with Destiny's Child, versus today, it's too monetized for me. There's no feeling or emotion behind it.
Now, the question you have to ask yourself is it the music or is it you? Because when you're a teenager or a young man, in your 20s, you feel all that stuff so much more than when you get older. So, like for instance, I grew up in the '90s. Jewel and Sarah McLachlan. When it came to the female artists of the time, those two were like the biggest in the world. I don't really listen to their music anymore because I am not. It's not that the music's got bad or anything. I'm not in that. I'm not there. I'm not where I was in the '90s. Just like I don't listen to Outkast or any other bands that I listened to in the late '90s when I was feeling way more. Well, I was feeling my feelings way more at the time, and so I always find that really interesting. As like if you try to just like take the music just as the music, like separate the way you feel, where the way the music makes you feel versus the skill level of the music. It's not like it's worse; it's just as good. But it's really interesting because like you don't feel the same way you did, 20 years ago. And it's almost like a time capsule when you listen to that music. When I listen to Numb and the rest of the Linkin Park music from that time, that is a time capsule to who I was when that song came out. And it's just kind of interesting hearing those bands continue on, like Houdini. Like I think Houdini is a really clever song. I think it's really funny. Doesn't
But
really,
also some old from the between the 60s and 80s.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. See? So
yeah. So it's
yeah. So I guess, to answer your question, it's like, to be fair, okay, yeah, a bit of both. There's the music changed. I feel being in the music industry myself, yeah, it has changed. For me personally, am I feeling it like how I used to feel it 20 years ago? No, I'm not. But then there's also nostalgia, right? Because, look at Taylor Swift, the whole era story, like around that. We are, as humans generally, we are always feeling for something back in the day, that memory, that experience. It's there. It's just how the music industry operates these days. And I'm not disrespecting the music industry, it's good business. So if I can take
well,
people back to a feeling or an experience, my first crush, my first girlfriend, it's good business.
and what's interesting is because I feel like with the music industry is a lot like the entertainment industry in general,
Yeah.
which is they want the most bang for their buck, right? So the least amount of work for the most amount of money.
Yeah.
And then you have artists who come along, like say Imagine Dragons, who write all their own music and they play all their own music. There isn't somebody else writing the music for them. There isn't somebody else telling them, oh, you got to wear this or you got to dress this way. You got to play at these, stages if you want to be successful. They just do whatever the heck they want because they're Imagine Dragons. They can do that. Movies are the same way. I don't know if you've noticed the quality of movies has plummeted over the last few years. And that's because they're trying so desperately to find this equilibrium where they can spend the least amount of money but make the most amount of money.
Yeah.
And it's very reductive, right? You get this sort of like you're going towards zero when it comes to quality. And auto-tune, I mean, if you're in the music industry, obviously auto-tune is, in my opinion, ruined modern music because it's made it all sound the same. If you turn on the radio, you don't even know who's who anymore because there are no modern Linkin Parks. There's no modern Smashing Pumpkins or modern Nirvana because everybody sounds so similar. Movies look the same way. They all look the same way. And movies have their own version of auto-tune called it's digital. Digital movies all look the same because digital movies are all lit the same way and they're all very monotone in their color scheme and how they're filmed. And books are no different. The vast majority of books being published now are how can I reach the most amount of people for the least amount of work to get the most money I can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny is because I kind of bucked that trend. I was like, listen, I don't want everybody. I can't please everybody. I can't write a book that everybody will love. But I can write a book that a few people will really love. And I kind of feel like it's where you basically have to find who you're writing your book for, who you're writing your music for, who you're making your movie for, and double down on that.
Yep.
Don't be like, well, I'm writing this book for these people, but everybody can enjoy it. No, I am writing this book for these people. If other people enjoy it, great.
Yeah.
But that doesn't factor into what I'm writing. That doesn't factor into the music I'm performing. That doesn't factor into the movie I'm making. I'm making it for this audience and this audience alone. And you might find, if you enjoy the book, that maybe you are that audience and you just didn't realize it. But I find it really interesting to get perspective from the other creative arts like music and movies that essentially are exactly the same idea, which is the modern music industry is trying to make music for everybody instead of trying to make music for the people who would like the music.
Yeah.
And movies are the same way.
Well, once you build a solid brand, okay, let's use Liquor Park again as an example. Okay, it's already branded. So no matter who comes in, leaves, passes away, sadly, and then someone else replaces, it's already got a solid fan base. Okay, just like Eminem, just like Taylor Swift, just like Beyonce. So whether the music is good or not, they are still going to have sold out concerts all around the world because they're backed up by a brand that's been building and building since the 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
But now, if you were a new artist coming into the scene, they got no choice but to go according to how you just explained it. Community is so important. You need to find, out of the 7 billion people in the world, you need to find people that, can relate to my message and focus on that people. And that is how
I promise
you're going to win.
A handful of people who really genuinely love your work is way better than a few hundred people who are meh about it. And part of one of the things that we always hear a lot as authors is you got to find your super fans. You got to find those people that order all the books and send you emails. I love getting emails from fans. Every time I open my email and there's an email from a fan, I'm so excited because it's when I was a kid, I never got the chance to talk to the authors or musicians or actors that I loved just by sending an email that didn't exist. And so I had a guy email me a couple of weeks ago, and the next thing I know, he flew out to a book signing I was doing from Washington, D.C., which is, like a 4-hour flight from D.C. to Utah. And that's the kind of fans you want. You really want to reach these people, and you don't do that by making your work vanilla. You don't do it by watering it down. You do it by doubling down on what makes your stuff you. And you got to stay. I always tell other authors, you got to stay true to who you are because it's the only thing you have when you're writing a story is you. Nothing you say or do is unique. Nothing I've written is something that's never been written before. No story I will ever tell is a story that hasn't been told before. In fact, I could probably point to you all the stories that I, copied essentially to write mine. And so, but what makes my stuff different or unique is it's me telling it. And I know who the audience is that I'm writing for. And I feel like music and movies are the same way.
Yeah. Be the first you, not the second somebody else.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now I was just thinking, while you were talking about movies, have you watched that movie, The Wedding Crashers, before in your life?
A long time ago when it first came out.
A long time ago, right? So, when you watch modern comedy, now I'm not such a huge fan of comedy, okay? I can't stand stand-up comedy, I just can't. I'm not a Trevor Noah fan, put it that way. I just don't get it. If you do see me laughing, at stand-up comedy, it's because I'm trying to figure out in my head, what is this guy doing? That's okay. But that's just me. So anyway, where I'm getting at you is that the other night, I came across Wedding Crashers, and I'm like, okay, sure, it's been a while. Let me watch it. You see, there's that nostalgia again, right? And I watched it, Jeffrey, I will not lie to you, I was laughing throughout the whole movie. Burst out laughing. And it doesn't happen often to me when I watch any modern comedy movie or series that comes out. It just shows you the change, the change in quality. We look at actors, from way back versus the actors of today, there's a huge difference. Huge difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, who are the modern leading men in cinema? Because I promise you, they're all over 40. There's George Clooney, there's Tom Cruise, a
Yeah.
handful of others, but it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know what happened with Hollywood and cinema, and I don't know what happened with music, but something happened, and it's just until there's some kind of studio say, hey, you know what, we're going to make an action movie, and it's going to be unapologetically.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. We're coming back.
Yeah, John Wick's a great example of this. John Wick is no holds barred action movie. If you don't like action movies, you're not going to like John Wick. They didn't try to make it for everybody. They just made it for action movie fans.
One
And
is really cool.
that's a great example. And that's how I try to write. I try to write for military sci-fi fans. And if you've never read military sci-fi before, but you think that what I'm describing sounds kind of cool, read it. And you'll be pleasantly surprised that you might also be a military sci-fi fan as well.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to say it, Jeffrey, because you are so cool. Who cannot read your book and be like, wow?
I'm going to quote you on that because nobody's ever called me cool before.
You are totally cool. You're totally cool, man. I mean, for us to have such a diverse conversation, probably a conversation that can go on and on and on about different range of topics. You know what I mean? It's cool. But, one thing I always tell, Mickey, your publicist, is that, the guest that he sends me, there's never been a dull conversation or a dull, moment. Like he just ends up attracting the coolest authors.
He is.
I don't know what it is.
He's my only publicist. I've never had a publicist before him, and he is fantastic. I am blessed to have Mickey out there pounding the pavement for me. He's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, like, he just brings in the dopest. I gotta say that. I give him credit.
I can't disagree. He brought me.
He's not gonna tell us his secret ingredient, but that's for him to keep.
Hard work. He works very hard. I promise you, he works very hard. And Denzel Washington gave this really great speech at a university once, and everybody was always telling him like, "Oh, you just got lucky. Luck is, to be successful, you just have to get lucky." And there's some truth to that. Better lucky than good. But the thing that he said years ago, and it stuck with me, is luck takes over where hard work stops. You've got to do the work. You've got to work hard, and then luck will take over and do the rest. And Mickey works his butt off. I mean, that guy works so hard. And I really appreciate it. Someone else who works hard. And, I'm up every day. I'm writing in the mornings. These books don't write themselves. I appreciate that. And you clearly are a man who works hard yourself. So I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, we keep going. Yeah, we keep going. I feel also in this day and age, you also really need to be a grounded person. You need to have a lot of humility in you. You need to be a kind individual. You need to be able to connect with people. Really understand. I see you frozen again, but it's okay. I'll edit that part. Yeah, but you get what I'm saying. You really need to be that person that can really connect to different caliber people, different cultural backgrounds, different religious backgrounds. Everybody will have a different opinion, as we see happening all around the world. And you really need to connect to that person, understand where the person is coming from. Be into that person. Don't fake it. Be organic and original about it.
One of the best things you can do, as probably as an entertainer in general, but as an author specifically, is just be yourself. People pick up on when you're fake. People pick up on it really fast. Especially, like you can't like. I'm somewhat knowledgeable about guns, but I'm not like super knowledgeable. And if I tried to fake being super knowledgeable, anybody who knew anything about guns would know I was wrong immediately. I am very knowledgeable about the subject of writing and storytelling, but I run into other people who claim to be knowledgeable about it, but aren't. And so it's always really easy to spot when somebody is faking it. So if you ever are inclined to fake something about yourself, because you think when they people like you. Don't. We can all see through it. Like you're 5. We know. You know, just be
Yeah.
yourself and you'll do much better in life. It might take you a little while. Nobody gets famous, or successful overnight. It will take you a while, but you'll get there. I have a buddy, he's also an author, and he may end up being on your show. His name is Rick Partlow, and he writes a brilliant military sci-fi book series called Contact Front. Or the series is called Drop Trooper, but the first book is Contact Front. And lots of people were like, "Oh, I've never heard of you. Was this your first book?" And he's like, "No, I was an overnight success, 10 years in the making." He had written for 10 years, publishing books before he published Contact Front, and it exploded and became really successful. So it takes time. Just be yourself. It takes time and you'll get there.
Yeah. And you got to be passionate. You got to be passionate because that's what's going to keep you going.
And oddly enough, often a lot of times, the things that you consider a weakness that other people have criticized about you your whole life, you're too excited about this subject, Jeff. You're too passionate about science fiction. You're too much of a geek. Those are the things that end up making you successul.
Yeah.
I'm
Embrace
sure
it,
you've heard
right?
in your life, "Oh, Kino, you're just too into music."
Yeah.
You get too excited about things. Stop being so excited about stuff. But that's the thing that, ultimately that's the thing that's going to make you successful, is that how much you love it. Because we've all seen and listened to and read books and music and TV shows that were made by people who didn't love it. And it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Very rarely are you good enough that you can write in a genre or make a movie or music in a genre that you don't love, that people think you did. It just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah. You have to be, truly into it, like wholeheartedly, like I've come across
80% of all books sold are romance novels. If you want to make money, right? And I'm not joking here. If you want to print money, write romance.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Before.
Good luck with that. If you're not excited about reading romance, you're really not going to be excited about writing it. And and that's pretty much it right there. You've got to be excited about what you're doing, especially in a creative field, to produce anything that's worth a darn.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I was just saying, I do consulting and there's so many artists that have come in and out of my life and they just weren't passionate about it. 2 to 3 months down the line, they start questioning themselves. They're looking at how much time and effort and money they actually need to put into the independent career. And, they're not getting, an ROI on it. And I'm like, I told you this, I told you this from the word go. This is the independent space. It's flooded, 100,000.
There are easier ways to make money. There are. It's because people only ever see like the really successful ones. That I'm not really familiar with the independent music scene, so I don't know who the really successful ones are. But in the author world, there's this guy, and he's absolutely just the sweetest, nicest man you'll ever meet. His name is Shirtaloon, of all things. That's not his real name. That's his pen name. He wrote a book series called He Who Fights Monsters. Now, you've probably never heard of this man, but he outsells Stephen King and J.K. Rowling combined.
Look at that.
Combined.
Wow.
He bought an island off of his royalties, an island off the coast of Australia. He bought it with his royalties from his books. Super nice guy. And so everybody, like when you're an independent author and you see somebody who's literally making millions of dollars per day, and you're like, "Oh, that could be me." Well, yeah, of course it could be you. It's not going to be. It could be, but it's not going to be. So people see that, and that makes them jump into the bandwagon and be like, "Oh, that's going to be me," not realizing that, that's one guy out of the millions of people who are writing books. It's just one guy.
Yeah.
That's worse odds than winning the lottery.
Look at that. That's the beauty of the independent space. Like, I don't have to know the author, but that independent author, independent musician has their peeps, has their people. in their own corner of the world, focusing on their specific niche. And that's just the beauty of it. The 100 million people that support me is not going to be the next guy's 100 million people. It's just so spread
Some of
out
them.
these days.
You got to steal some of them.
Yeah, true. But I want to say, like from this conversation, leaving 2025, there's two components of genres that I'm taking away now, with our conversation here. Now I got military, science fiction. But because you brought up romance, and I said, yeah, it's not the first time I heard an author say that. Now there's this component of dark romance, that authors are writing. A different component to it versus your traditional romance. That was quite an interesting conversation. I actually had it twice on the show.
Yeah, there's a thing going around on X right now about some of the meme I think is "Women, are you okay?" Some of the romance novels involving cows, just aren't okay. But it's romance is a weird genre. Believe me, if I could figure out how to write it, and if I loved writing it, I totally would jump ship because I like making money. I love telling stories. Don't get me wrong, but the making money lets me tell stories.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
I couldn't be less excited about a genre than romance. Now, having said that, there's absolutely romance in my books because I tell books about people, and people have romance, people have comedy, people have darkness, there's despair, there's hope, there's the entire human condition exists within my novels. But what makes romance novels is something else entirely. I've never figured it out because I've tried to read a few and I'm just like, I don't like anybody in this book. And my wife read the Outlander series. She really liked those books. And I thought it was kind of cool. That's the one where the lady goes back in time to Scotland. But all I could think of was well, if I went back in time to Scotland, could I bring a gun with me? Could I bring, like a tank? Can I help them fight the English? But that's not what those books are about at all.
Yeah. Man, bro, I mean, people are just looking for love,
And all the wrong
You
times,
know?
really.
Yeah. I mean, when I had the conversation with two different authors um, about dark romance, the best reference I could link it to was the 50 Shades series. Like,
Yeah.
dark romance goes even deeper than that, and it's
Well,
actually selling.
I don't want to like shame anybody for what they like because we all like different things and stuff that I think that is appropriate, other people aren't going to. But I will say this. I write books about people getting blown to smithereens. And for a lot of people, if you boil it down to just that, like if you boil it to that one aspect, 100 people are on this ship, 70 of them get back to port, 30 of them are killed in horrific ways that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. If you boiled it down to just that, it would sound pretty bad.
Yeah.
I've got to believe that there's something more to these books than just, girls like getting beat up, because that's what 50 Shades of Grey is basically. And so, I'm going to leave it for them to figure out. That's not my bailiwick. I'm going to stick with the
Yeah.
military stuff and, shooting
But
people.
the research, right? Because in that conversation, we tapped into research, and it's something you see happening in society. 50 Shades or dark romance has changed how we go about our love life in the real world.
Because books do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
it has changed, what, I'm talking about the younger generations now, right? What they are looking for in a partner. They are looking for that 50 Shades type of relationship in a partner. And if the partner can't give that to them, that is what is leading to extensive cheating and the divorce rate climbing country by country.
Yeah.
It's
That's,
fact, you
it,
know?
it's really interesting is that it would be very easy to say, hey, there's a correlation here, right? There's a correlation between this kind of entertainment and then these behaviors. But what you have to, the reason why there's not a causal relationship, though, is you have to ask yourself is what came first? Did these behaviors create people who were looking for these kinds of books? And then as these behaviors took off, these books became more prevalent? Or did the books cause the behaviors? Now, if you go back a few thousand years, wasn't Aurelius, it wasn't Marcus Aurelius, it was Augustus. Caesar Augustus, over the Roman Empire, was really concerned about the future of the empire. And one of the things he said, and you're going to love this, the downfall of the nuclear family is going to lead to the downfall of the Roman Empire. So here was, I want to say 10 BC. He's maybe 15 BC. He's desperately trying to hold the Roman Empire together because from what his perspective is, all these families are breaking up and they're letting in, all this corruption into the empire. People aren't being raised by their parents. Parents aren't staying together. And he sees that as the end of the Roman Empire. And after him is all this horrible, abhorrent behavior that the Romans undertook that looks very similar to what we're seeing now. So you have to kind of ask yourself is, going back to what I said in the beginning of the conversation, is it something new? Or is this just human nature taking its course?
We're repeating history.
Yeah. Well, we're plagiarizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. And look, I mean, conclude on the whole 50 Shades. It's not even like people read the book that led to their brilliant. They were watching the movie. They were watching the movie.
Well, I mean, if people had watched the movie, it would have made a lot more money. But it was, mostly just, if you look at Amazon has this thing. I don't know if you shop on Amazon or not, but Amazon, when it comes to Amazon books, Amazon has this thing called the dungeon. And if your book is that kind of book, it's in the dungeon. You won't see it on the front page of Amazon ever, because Amazon recognizes they have kids who shop there, and they're not going to put that kind of junk on the cover of on the front page. But it's there. It's all there. It's in the dungeon where you can't see it unless you specifically are searching for it. Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but humans being humans, I'm always wondering, is one causing the other, or is the other because of human behavior? And I tend to think I tend to go with the more holistic approach, which is I think it's human behavior that causes these books to be written, not these books are affecting human behavior. Because if you look at my stuff, right, are my books causing people to be better people, or it's very high horse of me to say that, but I tend to think of the people in my books as striving to be good individuals, or do they attract the people who are already out there who see that behavior and think that that's the kind of behavior I want to emulate? I said in another interview, when someone asked me what character in your books is most like you and why? And it was, the main character's name is Jacob T. Grimm. And he's not necessarily the most like me, but he's the person I would want to be if I could make myself be that person. And, I'm always striving to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. And that's Jacob in a nutshell.
Yeah. I just visualize this triangle of behavior leads to the book getting written. The book leads to that behavior getting more enhanced.
And it's entirely possible.
I agree with you. Yeah.
In which case, then we need people out there writing better books and producing better music and making films that inspire us to be better people.
Amen to that.
And less Grand Theft Auto.
No, we do. We need more creators in the independent space to actually step up and create such material. Whether it be the book, whether it be the music, whether it be a short film or play, we need that in society. We honestly do.
It's funny because it's not like you have to make a choice, right? When you're writing a book or you're writing a song or you're writing a movie, you make a choice. Everything is about choices. And you get to choose what kind of story you're telling, what kind of music you're making, what kind of movie you're filming. And you can choose to make Game of Thrones, or you can choose to make Band of Brothers. It's entirely up to you. I tend to choose Band of Brothers over Game of Thrones. And maybe what we really need is just more people making that choice. But I have found that creative types tend to be more toward the Game of Thrones than the Band of Brothers.
I'm a fan, gotta admit. I'm putting it out there.
Well, I mean, it's someone who looks at just the writing, right? That's all I really care about at the end of the day is like how well is something written. Is Game of Thrones is incredibly well written. And I'm talking about the book Song of Ice and Fire, not the TV show. I never watched the TV show, but Song of Ice and Fire is an amazingly written book. I mean, it's just the level of skill that man put into writing that book is just incredible. I like heroes, though, so not my cup of tea. Band of Brothers, on the other hand, again, talking about the book, though the TV show was also amazing, is a somewhat fictionalized historical accurate version of something that happened in real life. So it's not quite the same thing. But again, at the end of the day, when you're done reading Band of Brothers, you're left feeling like a better person. And I don't think you can say that about Game of Thrones. That could be me there.
Yeah. Man, did you ever consider launching your own magazine, just sharing all this book philosophy?
One day. I told you at the beginning, I love talking about books and storytelling and psychology and science and human behavior. This is my jam. I love this stuff.
Like you really quantum analyze, each story.
I like to think that I'm not doing anything by accident. Like the worst thing the worst thing I think you can do is make the right choice by accident. I'd like to make the right choices because I made the right choices. And when I was thinking about wanting to be an author, my wife and I sat down and like, okay, what do we have to do? What do we have to write so that people remember who I am? And what do I have to write so that the stories that I write really impact, them mentally? Have you ever watched Gladiator with Russell Crowe and John Hansu? Yeah. Hands down, bar none, my number one movie. That movie had a huge impact on me. I watched that movie like 3 or 4 times in theaters. And every time I watched it, I came away feeling like that was the man I wanted to be. Live or die, Maximus was the man I wanted to be. And so when I write stuff, I want you to come away feeling that like there's a character in here, whether you're a man or a woman, because that there's a character in here you can look at and go, that's the version of me that I want to be. And, maybe it'll help you. I don't know. But otherwise, what am I doing? Anybody can tell a story. Really. And there are plenty of, entertaining books out there. But I didn't just want to entertain, I wanted to inspire.
Yeah. Wow. Jeffrey, you are a phenomenal human being. Phenomenal,
Well, my wife would agree with you.
Yeah. I could be like a phenomenal author, great author, but you're just a good human.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. That shows in the conversation, that shows in how you, go about life, take on life. I'm sure it definitely does, guaranteed, 100% sure it'll show in your work, in your writing, So yeah, man, sure. Thank you. Thank you for being a good human.
You're welcome.
Because, all the up and coming authors, you are great inspiration for those authors. I already see it. I visualize it.
I like to tell people that if I can do it, anybody can do it, because I didn't technically graduate high school. I ended up getting a GED. I'm dyslexic. I have ADHD. I have a little bit of college, but no degree. I just really love writing and I love reading. And so if I can do it, I kind of feel like if I can make it work, anybody can make it work. You just have to want it bad enough, and you have to do the work required. And there's easier ways to do this than the way I went. No one has to wait until they're 42 to decide that they want to be a writer and make it work. You can do that at 16 if you want. And I've known authors who have. I mean, there are plenty of authors out there who started, very young, and by the time they're 20, have multiple published books, and they're very good. So there's no reason to wait. The number one thing I always hear from authors on every interview is, if you could do anything different, what would it be? And number one, I would start sooner. And yeah, if I could go back in time and make myself realize that I was dyslexic at a young age, I absolutely would, because it would have let me do this a lot sooner. And I love doing it. But then again, I am the way I am because my life was the way it was. And I'm not sure.
Exactly. I was just going to say that, everything that you've gone through, that you've experienced, has made you the person you are today. Even if, possibly all of us have those thoughts. Say, what if I go back in time and I change this? But then I think to myself, okay, but then I probably wouldn't be on this podcast with Jeffrey now. There's a butterfly effect again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my wife and I talk about this every once in a while, and I wouldn't change a thing if it meant I wouldn't get to be with her. So, because I wouldn't have stopped for anything.
Yeah. 100%. I definitely wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be going about life the way I am. I would not have had a podcast. When we think about, all the prosperity one can accumulate for themselves, being passionate about what they do. So, but if you just focus on the money in life, would you be happy or content with what good work you're actually pushing out in the world today? You probably wouldn't. If I had $1 million at 23 years old, would I have a purpose in life today? Possibly not.
No.
I wouldn't.
No, because you had $1 million.
I'm grateful for what I'm going through. Exactly. I'm grateful for what I'm going through. It's the lessons in between. It's enjoying the process.
No one works harder than people who don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Who can say that you have experienced or gone through what you have? No one. You got a great message to show and to tell, honestly. Jeffrey, thank you so much. Wow.
My pleasure, man.
It hasn't happened in a very long time. Thank you.
Anytime you want to have me back, you shoot me an email. I'm happy to come on and talk.
Yeah, definitely. Because you said your book now is pre-order. It's in the pre-order.
Yes, on paperback. Yeah, Against All Odds is available. You can go to any Barnes & Noble in the United States and Canada and order it. You can order it online. I'm not 100% sure how it works in other countries. It is available in paperback on Amazon, or ebook, or audiobook if you want, if you like audiobooks, which I do. And I have a fabulous narrator named Peter Burkott, and he is fantastic. And there's 8 in the series currently. Though the book 1 is being released in bookstores for the first time. We're up to book 8, and there's going to be at least 4 more in the series. So as long as people keep buying it, I'll keep writing it.
Yeah, 100%. And I would love to have you back in the future to come. So I'll definitely be in contact with Mickey about that. And I also checked that you're going to be on Authors Talk. So you're going to kill it.
I hope so.
You're going to kill it on that show. I can already see you going to kill it on that show.
Oh, well, thanks. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate that opportunity to come here and talk to you in a long form. Everybody wants sound bites anymore, or 5-minute or 10-minute interviews. And it's just nice to kind of, have a podcast kind of like Joe Rogan, where I can just come on and talk and really dig into the meat of things. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
No problem. And that's what I've always wanted the podcast to be about. It's not popular. I get that. But I needed to be a platform where you could come on and just have that lengthy conversation. There's really editing that happens here. Yeah, the vocals I edited where there was extensive freezing. Yeah, that's edited. But nothing over and above that is taken out. Every single word that you have said gets published. That's what the show's Yeah, Jeffrey, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in contact. That's
All
for
right,
sure.
Kino. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you so much, and all the best. Just before you go, one more thing. Where can people
Sure.
find you online?
Yes, jeffreyhaskell.com. And you can also go to Amazon. I believe it's just .com, and you can look up my name and you'll see my author page. Though I do have the book translated in German, so if you are a German fan, Athon translated into Germany, so you can go to the German Amazon store, and I'll have a page there as well.
And he's also on Instagram. I've followed him.
Oh yes, I'm also on Instagram and Twitter or X, and you can email me at jeffrey.haskell@gmail.com.
Yeah. I was stalking you. Carry on.
Hey, and if you like the book, please, leave a review, share it with a friend. You can advertise things to the end of days, but nothing is better than someone saying, "Hey, you really got to read this book." So share it with a friend if you like it. If you don't like it, I'm not interested in your opinion.
No haters allowed, right?
No, if you don't like it, leave a review. All reviews are good reviews. My favorite reviews are the ones where I'll get them back to back and they have completely conflicting things they didn't like. Like I'll have one person say, there are too many, it's kind of stupid, but they'll be like, there are too many female characters in this book. And then the next person will say, there's not enough female characters in this book. And I'm like, oh, okay, I did it right then. So if you don't like it, let me know why. Everything helps.
That's it. Start a conversation. If you're going to criticize me, firstly, if it's online, criticize me with a face. I don't want to see a car or a robot or whatever you're into. Right? Criticize me with a face. Let's have a conversation about it. That's what I love. And there's times where someone will criticize me about something online, and I'll hit reply with a video, and I'll be like, "Let's continue the conversation. This is my response. Let's continue." And then you don't hear back from them.
Yeah.
So, what was your goal? What were you trying to attempt here? I never delete the comment, but I responded. So let's have a conversation about it. Tell me why. Let's get into a dialogue here. Don't run away. Jeffrey, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy California and get home safe and all the best in your work, man.
Thank you so much, Kino. You have a fantastic day, my man.
Thank you, man. All right. Bye.
Sounds like we're well.